We've got big changes in the week ahead, as well as several severe storm chances, then a significant cool down by the end of the week. So let's start off with the overall temperatures for your Monday morning, the 17th of April. Man, it's actually kind of chilly across a good part of the country. You got widespread freezing temperatures where it's actually snowing this morning in Wisconsin. But even further south, we've got widespread 30s into portions of Kansas. Those temperatures even dip all the way down into portions of the southeast, with even checking in at 40s and into the down around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, even in the low 40s this morning. So a pretty cool, crisp, comfortable morning for a good part of the country. And underneath those temperatures, we've got some snow to talk about. Like I mentioned, it is snowing right now in Madison, Wisconsin, and they've picked up some healthy amounts. And we'll be adding to those totals, but where we're getting the rain this morning is where we need it desperately the most, down here into central and Florida here. And they're going to be getting some heavier rain showers for the rest of the morning before this actually kind of moves out. But for the rest of the country, you can see it's fairly clear underneath those cool, crisp, colder conditions. But for today, here's the overall setup. So let's take a look at the overall 500 millibar. We can see we got two areas of instability, basically extreme portions of the Pacific Northwest and also extreme portions of the Northeast and then along the Great Lakes. Out ahead of it into the middle of the country, we are going to be seeing things slowly start to turn around as we'll start to see more unsettled weather start to move back in. The winds do finally turn around after today, and pulling those south winds, that will increase the moisture and increase the opportunities for severe storms really starting into the day on Tuesday, and those will stick around all week long into the day on Friday time frame. So let's take a look at the overall rainfall for the next 24 hours. Underneath those troughs, that's where the unsettled weather is, and it's extreme portions of the Pacific Northwest where they are getting some more rain into their picture, and some of this could be some snow into the higher elevations. But there's where the precipitation is, up along the Great Lakes region and around in portions of New England, where they are picking up some added snowfall totals as well as some precipitation. But there's the rainfall further south into Florida. We'll be adding to those totals. Some of these areas could pick up another 1 to maybe 2 inches of rainfall. This area is into more of an enhanced drought and even an extreme drought down here in the Naples region. I know you picked up a lot of rain in Fort Lauderdale, but that was a very isolated event. But most of Florida is actually on the drier side. They desperately need the rainfall. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. It's also important to hit the like button as well. It definitely helps out more than you know. So let's take a look at the next 5 days. So here's the overall setup as far as the temperature anomalies. You can see what's happening here. We've got a pretty significant trough that's going to be entering, the Pacific Northwest. You've been colder. You're going to remain on the colder side. And then there's that trough along the Great Lakes region that will pinwheel across for northern portions of the Ohio Valley. But there's the ridging further south. So we are going to be complements of that, south winds, and that's going to be increasing the instability, but also ticking up the temperatures, at least for the first 4 to 5 days for your work week. And then we got a significant cool down for a good part of the country, clearing things out for your weekend coming up. So, and it's all complements of the teleconnection. So if we take a look at this, we typically don't look at this in the spring months because you don't get these cold shots, but we are going to get a fairly decent cold shot, complements of this AO and NAO both turning negative, as well as the EPO. So you can actually see this pretty significant dip here coming up over the next couple of days, and that will greatly buckle that jet stream and pull some of that colder air that's still up there in Canada, and then will filter down into the lower 48. And actually, as we get towards your Friday into the weekend time frame, we'll actually start filtering into our southern regions, even into portions of the southeast again. So definitely expecting a big cool down on the way. In the middle, we'll have to be dealing with some severe storms. So here's the overall setup on Tuesday. So things get a little bit more active. We'll start to increase these dew points across the southern plains and the midsections of the country. This is what they often refer to as a conditional risk. So ingredients are prime for severe storms, but we do have a strong capping inversion out here into West Texas. So likelihood of something happening are not very good. It's about a 20% probability, but in case it does able to penetrate that boundary layer, some of these could be some big time hell producers out here into the Fort Stockton area, down here into the Abilene area, portions of the Lubbock area, and then around, far extreme portions of West Texas into western Oklahoma. There's also another pocket of energy further north, has probably a greater probability of having some of those larger hail producers. It is a marginal risk, so it's not very significant, but it's one of those things, if it does pop in the daytime heating, some of these could be turning severe fairly quickly in this type of atmosphere in and around the Lincoln area, getting back into portions of Norfolk and the Sioux Falls area. That has the greater probability of seeing some severe storms on your Tuesday afternoon. But going into Wednesday, things get a little bit more interesting because we'll have increasing dew points, right? So we'll have the south wind, impacting these good part of Texas into Oklahoma, into Kansas. You see the dew points is above that 55 crucial range. We're in the low 60s, areas into the mid 60s. We've got an active dry line out in West Texas, and it'll move a little bit closer. It'll just be a little bit closer to the east, adding to higher instability and higher probability of severe storms. So if a day is going to be breaking the cap, it's likely going to be Wednesday and probably Thursday time frame. So here's the setup for your Wednesday along this boundary. You can see it's basically moved a little bit further off to the east. It does include the portions of the San Angelo area, into the Wichita Falls area, to the Oklahoma City area, into the Tulsa area, not actually into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think it actually stays west. The dry line stays west of that region, but further north, as we have a warm front pinwheeling across and lifting across to the northeast, then that's going to leave that boundary that we'll have to be seeing those big time hail producers out here into the Wichita area and possibly the Topeka area, Hastings, and Omaha, as well as into Des Moines up there in Iowa. We have to be concerned about it. It could actually even reach as far north as the Milwaukee area. Have to be concerned about some larger hail producers, but this is the area where they do have that hatched risk in place. Could be looking at maybe some golf balls, maybe some ping pong size. It is the greatest risk. It's not really a tornado risk, and you probably have some gusty winds, but the main concern on Wednesday is going to be your large to possibly some very large hail, especially within this corridor as we get into the heat of the afternoon, into the early evening time frame. There's your CAPE value. So yeah, it's going to have a lot more instability to work with, a little bit higher CAPE, a little bit of more energy to tap into, a lot more moisture, more energy, fuels the storms. And yeah, so it's going to be a conditional risk further south, but definitely further north, you have a greater probability of definitely breaking that capping inversion. But there's the setup as far as again, that dry line gets active. So here's kind of where the lightning display could unfold. So if it does in fact break, then that's going to be really lighting up along that boundary down here in West Texas, into Oklahoma, into central Kansas, as well farther north into Iowa. This is a peak heating event, guys. So get a little bit more concerned about the Wednesday setup, but especially under the Thursday setup, as this continues to push across to the east, because as we do that, we'll have a little bit more dip in the jet stream, and with that dip out ahead of it, we'll have that instability again as it pushes further off into Oklahoma, portions of North Texas. By then, maybe getting the action for that severe storms. This is a day 4 risk. I think it originates in and around the Paducah area, into the Springfield area, back into Little Rock. Entire state of Arkansas could get hit hard with severe storms. And then it pinwheels further southwest and does include portions of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, especially northeast Texas. So we'll just have to see how far southwest it's able to pin build and kind of what they call back building along this boundary as we get into the heat of the afternoon. But definitely probably areas, if you live east of the I-35 corridor, have to be on high alert for some severe storms breaking out ahead of a cold front, and the dry line gets a little bit closer to the Dallas-Fort Worth area into that afternoon time frame. So there's the temperatures. You're probably going to be getting the highest of the week down here in a good part of Texas. You're soaring into the 90s. But you can see at end of the afternoon, you got that little display where that boundary is, where those 60s is. That's where the storms should be breaking out, really along this boundary. And as they continue to dive, then kind of fill in this gap further off to the southwest. So there's the temperatures. As you're probably going to be hitting convective temperature, the atmosphere should start to turn over as the cap starts to erode in those areas, allowing for those storms to penetrate the boundary layer and rise to big time cloud tops and produce those stronger severe storms that could be some larger hail producers into this region. So we'll definitely have to be on high alert within that risk zone on your Thursday afternoon time frame. But there's Friday, right? So we got a pretty good cold blast. Here's the 21st of April. I showed you that dip in the EPO, the dip in the AO, the dip in the NAO. Hard pressed to see all the teleconnections kind of coming together, but that's exactly what's going to happen as we get into Friday. As that cold air continues to build up there in Canada, we'll be dropping southbound into Montana, into the Dakotas. That'll be reaching into portions of the northern plains here, entering Oklahoma, and that stops the brakes right there into the Arkansas region, where you're still in the warm sector further south into central Texas, far extremes, East Texas into Louisiana, back into Mississippi. Notice the compressional heating that takes place up here into the Northeast regions, where you're going to be inundated with some higher heat content up there, at least for one day before that cold blast enters your neck of the woods. But there's the setup for Friday. So we got to be concerned right along this boundary. I think it's out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area by then. I think it's out of Oklahoma. It's further south into far extreme East Texas, into the Shreveport area, back into the Jackson area. Portions of northern Mississippi area have to be at high alert for those severe storms. Again, this is a day 5 risk, so this will be probably expanded, as we get closer ahead of that boundary. But definitely there's the area of concern that you'll have to be more concerned about on your day on Friday time frame. But it's going to be a windy week. I mean, for the work week, it's going to be fairly windy as the winds start to pick up, especially across the middle of the country. April's your windiest month of the season, so it's natural to see some of these higher wind gusts. It's not extreme by any nature, but underneath those areas, that jet stream that comes across, yes, you are going to be seeing some higher wind gusts, and probably some wind advisories are going to be highlighted within this region over the next 4 to 5 days. But yes, as we get into Saturday, things get a little bit more unsettled as we move towards into portions of Kentucky area, into portions of Tennessee, back into the Georgia region. But it's pretty clear back behind that significant cold blast, you can see where the freezing line is. That is your red line depicted in this area. And that's more snow for Wisconsin, folks. I know you're probably over the snow by now, but yeah, it's cold enough, and it still has precipitation around. It's going to be snowing, so you got more snow coming back in the picture on the day on your Saturday morning in that region. And as the temperatures continue to plunge southbound, we'll start to see those temperatures entering a good part of Texas, a good part of the Southeast, and well below average for this time of year. 15, 20, upwards to maybe 25 degrees below average temperatures across that pretty significant mid-April cold blast. It's going to be definitely on the way for Saturday. And then there's overall temperatures as you wake up. So it's pretty cold, right? I mean, this is all these areas in red. That is your freezing temperatures for a good part of Montana, but from Wyoming to Colorado, even portions of New Mexico. Even portions of Kansas is going to be in the freezing levels, and then of course further north into Nebraska, to the Dakotas and Minnesota, still freezing for them. But yeah, further south, even to the 40s into the Oklahoma area, widespread 50s across a good part of the southeast. So that's a pretty significant cool down, as we get into the weekend. And I think it even gets colder as we go into Sunday morning, and more areas will start to feel that cold blast for mid-April timeframe as you wake up with much chillier conditions for a good part of the country, and actually some isolated record low temperatures even in the portions of the Wyoming area up here. But a good part of the country is actually going to be experiencing those colder temperatures as we get into the weekend. Even Illinois might get into the freezing conditions up there into northern Illinois. But behind that, it's cool, right? I mean, but it's going to be really comfortable going into your Sunday. So not only do you get the cold air that just kind of clears the atmosphere out, but for April 23rd, it's kind of rare to see such good part of the country widespread lower dew points and lower humidity too. So it's going to be a nice day coming up on your Sunday after some of this severe storms kind of clears itself out, leaving for a nice weekend for a good part of the country ahead. So, but there's your overall rain prospects over the next 7 days. So we see these unsettled weather when we have the trough up there into the Pacific Northwest. That's where the rain's going to be underneath those clouds. But it's going to be high and dry for a good part of California and much of the desert Southwest, where they desperately need the rain. There's not much. That's why the conditional risk is so crucial. I mean, unfortunately, if it does break, it's all going to be severe. So, but you will get rain if the conditional risk does actually break the cap. But most convective models really don't have much. So that's why it's what's labeled as a conditional risk, because we do have a strong cap in these regions out here in western Oklahoma and to West Texas. But where we don't have a cap in place is further east into East Texas, into Louisiana, back into Arkansas, Missouri, and as we fishtail up into Iowa, going into Wisconsin, a little bit heavier amounts of precipitation for those regions. We see a little clearing up here into a good part of the southeast, and there's the rain that you're going to be experiencing this morning into Florida. But further north, with that boundary coming in, some heavier amounts, that's going to be into the northeast as well. And there's your snow for the next 7 days. So obviously, as we get deeper into April, the snow line just lifts further north, right, as it should, in more portions of Canada, even into Wisconsin. You'll be adding to those totals, but most of that is actually going to be in the next 24 hours. You'll clear out, and then of course you get a little bit more on your day on Saturday. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do check out the El Nino video after this one. It highlights what's to come as we get into your summer and hurricane season and possibly the fall months. So I'll see you tomorrow on the next video.